And we are live with the Brown Bag Business Chat. I'm keeping the devil horns and the beard because I love it. I'm here today with Michelle from Solutions of North Texas. Michelle is, in fact, a princess, and she's here to talk to us today about personal branding. So personal branding is something that I think a lot of small business owners forget about. They don't think about their own brand and instead are very focused, and I think that rightly so, in a lot of ways, on their business's brand and building that. And they kind of forget about, well, what about my brand and who I am? Well, our argument today is that you already have a brand, it already exists, and it's just a matter of building or augmenting it, but it's different for every person. So Michelle, you work with a lot of people who have some difficulty with their personal brands. But you also work in a nonprofit that has a few people who have very strong personal brands. So that's why I wanted to bring you on, so that you could kind of give us your individual and unique perspective on personal branding. So before we begin, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what do you do, why do you do it, and what is Solutions of North Texas?
So I'm Michelle Boerst, and I am the Public Relations Coordinator here at Solutions of North Texas. Solutions is a nonprofit drug and alcohol facility. We have residential services, we have treatment services, we have counseling services that we offer just everywhere to any family individual that needs help. Mm-hmm. The reason that I'm here is because for a long time I thought that I had to work for a for-profit company and volunteer on the side to get my feel good. Mm-hmm. And then I started working here and realized, oh, I can do it all in one. I can actually help people every day for work, and to me there's nothing better. So I absolutely have huge passion for helping others, and that's what brings me here every single day.
Well, that's fantastic. So we want to talk. We've known each other for a little while. We know a little bit. I know, who we're talking about here at Solutions, and maybe I'm jumping the gun here a little bit, but you're the founder of Solutions. Scott is a very forceful, powerful individual, right? He has a powerful personality, and for a long time, it was hard, I think. Solutions has been around for a decade, right? Let's see your shirt. Your shirt has a little.
Can you see it?
Yeah, there it is. 10 years, right? So Solutions has been going for a while. For a while, it was just Scott, and his brand was basically synonymous with Solutions. But now things are a little bit different. Can you talk a little bit about that? About what it's like having someone within this company that has such a powerful brand on their own?
Sure. There's an upside and a downside to it. The upside is Scott's a big guy. He rides a motorcycle. He rides a Harley. He has tattoos. He's always been that way. He's never walked around in a business shirt, that hides his tattoos. He's always been very, very out there. So he's easily recognizable. Plus, he's very outgoing. Yeah. So that's great, because everywhere he goes, he's just Scott. People know him. The downside to that is people call our organization all the time asking for Scott. and that worked when Scott did every part of the business. Yeah. But now we have, intake coordinators, and we have public relations people, we have case managers. And so Scott is not always the person that they need really to talk to, but it's very hard to get people to kind of back off of, oh no, I want to talk to Scott. Yeah. So the personal branding worked really well for him in the very beginning. It still works phenomenal because he just walks into a place and everybody knows him. It's like walking into Cheers. Hi, Scott. So again, the downside to that is, the other people in the company kind of have to build their personal brand too, so that when we think about intake, we think about our intake coordinator, Christina.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something that small business owners might not be thinking about, especially if you're in the early stages. It's just you. Growth seems like a pipe dream even. And you're thinking, well, why should I even bother with this? But I think what you brought up was an excellent point, is that now you've gotten to this this point of growth where solutions needs and the customers need there to be multiple people, not just Scott. And because he, his brand is so powerful, there needs to be a way of other people within the business of growing there. So thinking about even from the beginning, not only how am I going to grow my personal brand, but what do I want my personal brand to look like 2 years down the road, 5 years down the road? How separate do I want to be from this business so that I can give the business room to grow and not always be dependent on me and my brand?
And that's a great topic. So the thought behind that is, at least personal branding in our business, is we want to become experts at what we do. Okay, so that's where you separate yourself from your business.
Right.
Your personal branding is you being an expert in your field, easily recognizable, easily approachable. All of those things keep tying into you being an expert, which allows you to move in a direction in your company. So, for example, if I was an expert in one area, as my company grows, I'm allowed to move myself into that area exclusively and easily separate myself from the other parts and allow other people to move into that area.
Absolutely. And I think another thing to keep in mind is if you're starting a small business or any business, businesses have a nasty tendency to fail. And when they fail, you need to have a personal brand to step back on. Or, some people like, there's some people who I'm thinking of Chris Lima, right? A very powerful personal brand in the WordPress community. And he is, he loves startups and he jumps from startup to startup to startup. Now, if he had focused everything into that first startup he built and then off it goes, and then he's sitting there with, standing around wondering, well, what do I do next? It's harder for him to move on from that. And of course, we all want our businesses to succeed, but the reality is many people need to start several businesses before they get one that sticks. So maybe we need to take the time to also build the personal brand just as a backup. So how do I move on to the next thing if this doesn't work out?
I mean, that's exactly true. Because if you think about it, boards come along, people move, they change. Sometimes you have started a business with someone or a company or, some sort of alignment that goes south. Maybe the other person, the other entity is no longer someone you want to be associated with. So if you're starting out, the worst thing you could do would be to tie yourself to another person or a company's brand so intrinsically that you could never remove it and you go down with the ship.
Absolutely. And that's an excellent point. It's a backup in a variety of ways. So let's, we got ahead of ourselves. Let's back up a little bit and talk about, well, I got ahead of us. Let's talk about personal branding. What does that mean? What do we mean when we say building a personal brand? Is that just like a fancy logo and a color scheme? What does that mean?
So personal brand, we talked about Scott, and he's got the tattoos and the Harleys, and kind of throughout the 10 years that we've been doing this, he's never changed. He's never started wearing a suit, never became a button-down kind of person. My personal brand is, I kind of have done volunteer work for years in this community. I'm kind of known because I sort of have all this crazy hair and I have a very big laugh. I use it all the time. So people can hear me laugh and they know, across the room that it's me. And that has kind of become, what that does for me is even if people don't necessarily know me personally, they know me.
Yeah.
So, and then when I'm open and approachable and I'm out in the community and I'm easily recognizable. Frenchie is a great example. People walk right up and they feel they know you, so they feel they can talk to you. They can start asking you questions. They can. So I'm also building my knowledge base because people are asking me questions, and I'm saying, well, I don't know, or I do know, and I'm learning all the time. But it's because I'm approachable, easily recognizable, and people already have built a relationship and a connection with me without ever having met me.
Exactly. You know, I was just thinking when I hear your laugh from far away, I have this reaction. I go, "Is that Michelle?" And there it is. But I think you hit on something that's really important, which is that the personal brand is something that already exists, right? That's the name of our hangout. You're already a brand. And it's something that encompasses, like when we talk about branding in general, right? Amazon is not just their fancy logo, right? They're the experience that you have when you log on to their website. They're the experience you have when you call their customer service operative and someone says to you, you know what? And I had this happen a while back. You know what? I'm sorry we lost, that package got lost. Even though it wasn't our fault, we're just going to send you a free one. You know, it's all these things, like Jeff Bezos says, it's what people say when you're not in the room about you. And so there, you know, your personality plays a big role in it. But I think just as big of a role is your actions and, you know, your character. Who are you and what do you do? Are you the kind of person who do, and it doesn't really matter if it's good or bad, right? We want it to be good, but whatever it is, that is part of your personal brand. And I think like some of the clients that you guys have come in there, they struggle because they've done some things in the past maybe that are hurting their personal brand. So how do you come back from that? How do you help someone who's maybe made some mistakes and they're like, okay, there's some damage has been done to my personal brand. How do I fix that?
Well, that's right up my alley, because public relations, of course, is always about taking all of that publicity, good and bad, and using it as you need to. So if you have kind of bounced back, bounced somewhere you didn't really necessarily want to, the trick to that always is to kind of be honest and open. When you just say, I did this. The famous example is Tylenol being poisoned. They stepped right up and said, we don't know how this happened. We're so very sorry that people were poisoned or injured. We're doing everything we can to fix this. So it's the same thing with your personal brand. I'm going to step up and say, I'm human and I had a hitch in my giddy up. So I am going to take that knowledge and I'm going to tell you why that made me a better person today. Yeah. And that every time, because I tell people all the time, when you have done something, when you've made a mistake or stepped out, an employer is not looking for someone who has never made a mistake, because that person doesn't exist. Right. What an employer is looking for is that person who steps up and said, oh, hey, I'm the first person to tell you I made a mistake. Yeah. I want to fix it. And the second thing I want to do is learn how not to do it again. Yeah. So being someone who is honest, open, recognizes that they've made a mistake, and then moves forward to correct it and rectify it so I don't make the same mistake again. Yeah. That's all that's ever required of a person.
Yeah. And it seems so simple to say that. It can be so difficult to do. And you see this happen. I just thought of recently, so I don't know if you saw this or not, 50 Cent was at an airport. Apparently he's very well known on Instagram. I had no idea. I kind of forgot about him after 2004. But he saw a guy who was working at the airport, and he decided that this individual was using drugs, and recorded him and had this long spiel about what was wrong with the youth of today. Ironic, given 50 Cent's background, and then he posted it on Instagram, and someone came forward, and eventually the whole family came forward, and they said, this kid is not on drugs. He does not do drugs. He's autistic. And you have made a very grave mistake, 50 Cent, and hurt this guy, right? And so you can even see in the video, the poor guy is like, why is this famous man like berating me? I can't believe it. And so 50 Cent had a choice. He could either A, come forward and say, you know what, I made a mistake, that was stupid of me, and apologize to the family and try to make things right. But that's not what. Now, he may have come back later and done that. I didn't follow up on the story. But what he did in the moment was he deleted that post and didn't respond, and acted as though it didn't happen. And someone replied to that and said, 50 Cent, I've been a fan of you for, this X amount of years, and you just lost me as a fan because of what you did. And so I think you're right. I think that owning up to mistakes is such a simple way of fixing your personal brand, but it's something that I think can be very hard to do even for, celebrities.
If you're going to build yourself as kind of, an expert or an ethical person, part of that is to me the educational, the learning part. I didn't get to be an expert. I didn't wake up an expert in anything.
Yeah, right.
I got to be an expert because I pay attention, I listen, I talk to people, I ask questions, I read, I go out on the internet, I check things out. And when I don't know, I admit I don't know, but I figure out how.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people do that too. They're afraid to try. I'm afraid to try something new. I'm afraid to ask someone a question. I'm embarrassed to admit I don't know. And all of those are detriments to you actually becoming an expert and developing your personal brand to that level. I mean, expert level, personal brand. That's what we want.
Absolutely. So, one thing that I do want to talk a little bit about is what's it like to have multiple people with strong personal brands working under one roof? Because I think at this point you could say that about Solutions, right? Everyone knows Michelle, right? Everyone certainly knows Scott, but there are other people there too who've been working there for years and who are known as well in the recovery community. So what's that like, knowing that it's not all dependent on one person?
Well, the good thing about Solutions is that Scott and his wife Leslie have always allowed their company to grow. And I mean that by not micromanaging. When Scott says it all the time, when people come in and they're doing something that he originally did in the very beginning, he says, that's not the way I did it when I started, but it's not me anymore. It's not my department. And so everybody here has been given the freedom to build their department as they want. Scott and Leslie give us goals and things that they would like to see. And, how we step up is kind of our business. And then the next thing that they did was they hired passionate people. Everyone here is passionate about what they do. And the other thing we do is we put people where they're comfortable. No one is asked to do something or be in a department where they're not comfortable. I'm not put in a dark closet because I would go insane. I need people. So I don't get in trouble for walking around, and taking a break and talking to people and kind of building relationships and sort of upping the office morale, because that's an area I excel. I talk to everybody that walks in the door. Other people are, their peer-to-peer experience, and that's where they excel in what they know, and they're given the freedom to talk about that and to expand that and use that to help our clients all day long.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's very difficult to let go of that control. I think especially if you've been running a business for yourself for a little while, I think it can be very hard to let go and to allow someone else to take over, especially if they make some mistakes in the beginning. But I think even scarier can be, okay, what if I bring on someone who's better than me, right? Or who's more skilled than me? Are they gonna, take my business or whatever? And I think those are natural, legitimate fears because stuff like that does happen from time to time. But I think being able to take the risk, and that's something we have here too at Blue Steel Solutions. I am given the freedom to do a lot of stuff when it comes to content, when it comes to these interviews, and other people in other departments, our salespeople, our design person is given a lot of freedom as well. And I think that's super important because it's given us the capacity to make things better than they might have been otherwise, because our boss can only be so many places at once. Just like Scott can only be in so many places at once. So I think it's something small business owners should consider for the future. Is am I going to allow these employees to do what they need to do and not micromanage, so that as a whole my business can grow?
Well, and I don't mean to kind of bring up a a sad topic, but people also retire and they also pass away.
Yeah.
So if you have made your entire business, branded on you, that's personal branding too. But if you have tied everything on you, it's kind of like the person who knows how to do everything in the office. We have what we call a hit by a bus manual. And that means that if someone was hit by a bus tomorrow, what are we going to do with their stuff? They're going to come back, but there may be a period. And so we have a plan on who's going to pick up in what area so nothing drops. Those kind of being open to being okay, to letting go of, I have to be able to be okay to let go of how someone does my stuff for the 6 weeks in the hospital.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit more about, just personal branding in general. So some things that I think a lot of people do is, they make their own website, or they come up with a logo or a color scheme. What are some other things that people can do to kind of shape this out and build this personal brand into a thing so that it's more than just, me?
Well, one of the things that people can do, and I'm a huge volunteer advocate, you need to leave your house, your office, your thing. You need to get in your community, and you need to start helping others. You need to volunteer. When you're volunteering, you're standing right next to a lot of people that you may not necessarily be able to see normally. Volunteers are normally retired people, judges, attorneys, icons of the community, and you're there working right next to them. What opportunity is that ever going to happen for you? So I'm just a huge volunteer advocate. Today, business owners are seeing volunteerism as an actual business experience. So the immense amount of things that come back from volunteering, let alone helping others, but what comes back to you is incredible. And I'll tell you that as a person who volunteered for a very long time, I've rarely had to go look for a job. People call me because I am always out there, and they know that I'm hardworking. I have the greatest references in the world. I mean, I've worked next to some really awesome people, and I list my references on an application. When I got this job, they didn't call those references. They knew that I knew other people in town, and they called them just out of the blue. So all of that getting out, getting about, volunteering, just doing things, being a part of your community, being helpful. It sounds kind of goofy that's going to build your personal brand, but it will.
No, I agree with that completely. And, we try to do stuff like that too here. And I think that our salesperson, and she is really great at it, Randy Skinner. I mean, Randy, right? See, you're all right, smile. Why are you smiling? Because you know her personal brand. And why do you know her personal brand? Because she's everywhere, right? See, I swear, there's 4 of her, actually. There's not just one. And they go to every event in Denton. So, I mean, she really is. And because before she worked for us, that's how we knew her, because every event I'd go to, I swear to God, it'd be like, there's Randy. And that helped her to build the personal brand beyond just, here's my logo, beyond just, here's my website, beyond just, here's a blog where I share my thoughts. That makes me think of someone else, who's really involved in the Chamber of Commerce, Angelica. She just started her blog not too long ago, and that is helping to build her personal brand. So I think there are a lot of things that can be done beyond just coming up with a fancy color scheme. But that's usually the focus. So I'm glad you brought up volunteering, because it can be so good for not just for personal branding, but for networking, like you said, and even meeting. And that's, Randy meets clients regularly doing that kind of stuff.
Right. And skills on paper are on paper. When you're out there, boy, I tell you what, I work in drug and alcohol addiction, but if I were to go, with another company and offer my PR skills, I'm a huge advocate of learning. I'm learning. And all of that I can always bring back to my company. I can always use that in my personal branding. Just everything kind of has a karmic way of rolling around.
Absolutely. And I mean, and another thing to think about too is that, that it's just so important, because let's say that you run a business for 20 years and you step back one day and you say, you know what, I want to do something different. If I am so tied in to this business and what it is, that is going to be that much more difficult. It gives you the freedom, I think, to do a lot of different things. And I mean, and I think again of Chris Lima. He's so perfect for this. He worked at Crowd Favorite for 18 months, did a lot of great things there. And then he said, you know what, I want to do something different now. And he stepped back and now he's doing something different. So I think that, it's something that I just want to get it on the radar of people's minds. Think, if you're building a small business, consider your personal brand and what you want it to look like now, in a year, in 5 years, when I have 2 employees, when I have 10 employees. So
that's so important. It's just like building your resume. It's everything. You are your walking, talking resume. I mean, that's the best way to think about it. Your resume isn't tied to the company you work for. It's tied to you. So be the walking, talking resume that you say you are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Well, we're just about out of time. So before we close, why don't you tell us how we can find you? Well, any last thoughts on personal branding? Or are you ready to knock it out?
I have one last thing to say, because I know people talk about how can I get my personal brand when I'm sort of shy?
Yeah.
You talk about being outgoing, you talk about volunteering, you talk about all these things, and I'm a little shy with that. The one thing that I can say that I'm a huge fan of, this is one of my favorite TED Talks, is this Amy Cuddy, and it's on body language. You can find it right there. And she is someone who can tell you how to fake it until you become it. And this is a 20-minute TED Talk. If you do nothing, watch that. So,
let's talk a little bit about that. We got a few minutes. I think this is important too, right? Because I think it's easy for someone like you, someone like me, who has this outgoing personality, or at least can pretend we have one, maybe, to go out there and do these sorts of things and put ourselves out there, and it's not so frightening. But when you're shy, it's much different.
Yes. So Amy Cuddy talks about, she was a very intelligent person, going to all these colleges, had a great future, bright future, had a car accident, lost some IQ points. And because of that, she felt that she no longer was worthy or as intelligent. She lost her personal brand, which was a very intelligent person.
Yeah.
She lost it at a young age, in her 20s. Talk about terrifying. So she had to rebuild her personal brand internally as well as externally.
Yeah.
So she had to not only convince herself, because a lot of people were telling her, you can't do this any longer, you can't go to school any longer, you can't do these things any longer. And the first thing she had to do was believe in herself. And so with some help and some good professors and advisors, she was able to do that. And her thing is practice. You practice, practice, practice. You go talk to 2 people, and then you talk to 4 people, and then you talk to 4 people, 6 people, 8 people, and you just do that. If you make a goal of introducing yourself to one person everywhere you go, or every networking event or anything, if you have to work up to it, I'm gonna go to 3.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna go to one, and then I'm gonna introduce myself to someone. You just keep doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, there's this untrue dichotomy, that you're either an introvert or you're an extrovert, that there's no in between. And I think that's very false. Personally, I can do well in social situations, but I don't necessarily seek them out. So I think that it can be difficult for everyone, unless you're one of those. I feel like there are not a lot of them, people who just like, I can't wait to get to this social event, right? And just talk to every single person there. I think that it's like anything. You build it one step at a time, one piece at a time. 5 years ago, my personal brand didn't exist, right? Now it's this nice, tiny little, baby brand that's just blossoming, right? So these things take time, but consistent, dedicated effort can produce results just like it can with your business. You know, it's the same thing with a business. The people who succeed didn't give up.
Right. I mean, you're absolutely right. You just keep stepping out, stepping out, stepping out. Same thing with your clients. That's how you get clients.
Yeah.
You know, you just keep hitting it. You keep picking up the phone. You keep making friends. And I think that the more sincere you are, if you're out to get clients, I think that probably is not going to be as successful as someone who's out to get friends, who's out to get relationships, who is out to help people.
Absolutely. All right, what a beautiful note to end on. I love it. So from the angel herself, Michelle. So tell us a little bit about how do we find you online? How do we find Solutions of North Texas? How do we connect with you guys and learn more about you?
So Solutions is at www.sontx.org. We're here in Denton. Our number is 940-898-6202. You can call us. Anybody who answers the phone is personally branded and ready to help you.
I love it.
In their particular field, even if it's just answering the phones.
Hey man, that's a difficult job. I've done it before. So, all right, thank you so much, Michelle. I appreciate it, and we'll post all that stuff on a blog post and have your social media on there as well. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you, Adam. It's been a pleasure.
It has been wonderful.